Welcome, everyone, to another episode of The Scuttlebutt. I'm your host, Sean Hall, Director of Programming with the Veterans Breakfast Club. We're a nonprofit in Western PA whose mission is to create communities of listening around veterans and their stories to connect, educate, heal, and inspire. Today's guests are Lita Thomas and Jean Marie McNamara. They are a mother-daughter who both have served in the armed forces, and they wrote a book called Lita and Jean, Memoirs of Two Generations of Military Women. We dive into their story. Lita, she joined back whenever women had first been integrated into the military. Jean followed her mother's footsteps and also enlisted. This book is equal parts biography, autobiography, memoir, and a love story. And as you, I think, will learn through this episode, it's very much about family. And the strength that both of these women have is truly inspirational and incredible to listen to, especially when we get into the injury that Jean sustained while in service and the very extensive and long recovery that she has undertaken. It really blew me away, the strength of these two women, and really inspired me the love that they share. So I hope that you enjoy this episode. Please check out their book. We'll put the link to their book here in the description. And I would love to hear from you about your thoughts on the relationship they share, as well as the relationship that they had with the military. Please remember to like, share, subscribe, and ring the bell on YouTube so you're the first to know whenever we release new episodes. Thank you for watching. And if you are new to the Scuttlebutt, you can check out all of our previous episodes across podcast platforms, as well as watch them here on YouTube. And one other note for this episode is that you will see Lita on screen if you're watching on YouTube, but Jean, you will not. She recently had some mouth surgery and had a bit of swelling, didn't want to appear on screen, but you will be able to hear her in the background. I don't think that takes away from her story in the least, as you will find. So thank you for coming to the Scuttlebutt and enjoy the show. Lita and Jean, it's so wonderful to have you both here for the podcast. Lita, I'd love for you to start us off and introduce yourself. Welcome to the Scuttlebutt.
Thank you very much. My name is Lita Thomas, and my previous names were McNamara. My maiden name was Scarrow, and I spent 23 years total in the armed services. 6 of those were in the Air Force Reserves. The bulk of my career in the military was in the Illinois Army National Guard. I bounced around quite a bit, looking for security, looking for rank. And as a single mother, I was just constantly looking for a way to support my girls.
And I'm Jean Marie McNamara, and I'm Lita's daughter, her eldest daughter. The younger one is more of a farm gal. So she has served our country by growing lots of zucchini. Chickens. I served in the Illinois Army National Guard, and I enlisted, and then after my contract was up, I went ahead and re-upped, and then I went to OCS and became an officer like my parents.
Excellent. There is, obviously we're here to talk about your book, which is, it seems like equal parts biography, autobiography, memoir, love letter. And I want to get to all of that. I feel like we will as we go through this conversation. But Lita, I want to start with you because the beginnings of your enlistment are so interesting in the sense of, yeah.
Oh yeah.
But enlisting at the time that you did, right after women were integrated into the military. I'm sure there's a million stories we could get to with that specifically, but you also, did you have 2 kids when you enlisted?
2 kids. I
did. 2 kids. What was going through your mind when you had 2 kids and you're enlisting in the military? That seems to me like that. What could be harder?
Right. And this was back in the day before regulations changed. There was a recent change to regulations that is out there to support single parents.
Right.
At that time, there was no support.
No, it was the opposite. Just before I enlisted, I was working 3 different jobs, trying to raise my 2 girls on my own. I was not quite divorced. I was separated in the process of a divorce. And as I was going from one job to the other, to one of the other ones, I passed a recruiter's desk, And he gave all these great spiels, and I'm like, that looks interesting. So I made an appointment, and I went downtown, and I met with him the next day, and I signed up. It was like he got me. When he said free college, I was thinking, how am I going to ever make anything of myself without a college degree? Um, I'm not going to be able to afford college. And how am I going to keep maintaining a roof over our heads? So it just looked like a win-win for me.
Did you know anything about the military before you joined?
Nothing. As a matter of fact, I knew that my dad was in the Army. He was in the Korea. My stepfather, but I call him my dad because he raised me, and in my heart, he is my dad. And I knew that he was in the Army, but he never talked about it really much. So it's not something that was talked about at the dinner table or anything. But I knew that he had gone in the Army. So when I came home the next day, and I told him that I had enlisted in the Air Force, he's like, a little bit of a snub. And I said, well, they had this great he said, okay, sounds good. But like you said, the book goes into the details how I started out Air Force, and then it changed very quickly.
And you'll have
to read the book to learn about that. I ended up Army, active duty Army, and then as my career went on, I went back Air Force for a little bit. I did miss the Air Force.
I'm sure. Did you, at any point whenever you enlisted, you had your two girls, did you think that this would in a way affect them? Like that your decision to enlist, like how would you be able to do both, and how would you bring them up through being in the military? It's very different because once you enlist, your family is also enlisting in a way.
Right. And I was not thinking about that at all. I was thinking about the monetary benefits of joining the service. And because I had a supportive family at the time, I said, we can make this work. My mom said that she would watch the kids while I was away at training. And I thought that would work out fine. And I thought everything was going to be good.
How did you start to, I mean, I'm talking from experience in the sense of I have a 2.5-year-old. And how did you develop a routine? And did the girls just sort of find their way through that?
Well, at the very beginning, like when I was in training, I didn't know what was going on at home. I just, hoped that everything was going well and they were with my mom and dad. But then once I went to my first duty station, which was Fort Riley, I had a very supportive command structure. The people in the office that worked, I was a mechanic, by the way, and the people that worked in the office had children, and they introduced me to the child care, which was right across the street from our motor pool. They introduced me to somebody that rented housing. I mean, it all fell in place because it was like a cohesive unit with the other family members in my unit.
Can you talk a bit about that?
Because I had a new family.
Yeah, you do. You gain such an enormous family when you enter the military, and not always the best family. My family isn't perfect, but certainly whenever you enter this new group filled with people from all different walks of life, you're going to experience that with good and bad. And that's part of what the book is it's very unflinching about the truths of what both you and Jean went through in your service. But you felt at the beginning, that you were supported by your command structure.
I did. My first duty station was very supportive.
And lead me through sort of like your service. So you got trained, and you spent a long time in. So there was obviously good things happening that you wanted to stay in.
So after only 15 months of active duty, my ex-husband took me back to court and said, no, I don't like this arrangement anymore. And I had to get out of active duty. And at that point, because I was a single parent, and now the military knew I was a single parent, they said, well, then you're done. I said, so I was done for a while. But then I found out later that I could reenlist in the Air Force Reserves as a single parent, as long as I had my parents to sign a document saying that they would be responsible if I got mobilized, deployed.
Mm-hmm.
So at that point, I instead of the Army, I went into the Air Force Reserves.
And again, I think they were very supportive of my mother's career and family. We went with her when she, went on some overseas missions, and had a nanny while she would go, while she was away at work. We had a nanny, and so we had a very enriching environment. We learned a lot about the history and culture of the area we were in, and like even like the food and the music, and it was quite a wonderful time for us. And I don't think we really hit any snags in terms of support and everything until my mom transferred over to the Illinois Army National Guard. Because like there's a culture, like a work environment culture, and you have that in the civilian world and also in the military world. And so the Army, when she enlisted, very supportive, very nurturing. They want to see her succeed. The Air Force Reserve, very similar situation, very focused on family, and everyone felt that. And then, but when she went over to the Illinois Army National Guard, it was a very different culture and different environment.
And I do want to get to the Air National Guard as well, but let's talk first about being a woman entering at that time. What was it like for you as a woman, after this sort of integration?
Back in '77, it was an entirely different Army than it is now. Trust me. We were almost like second-class citizens. I mean, I could tell you. My drill sergeant, for instance, who was assigned to our platoon of women, we were the first platoon at Fort Jackson of women to be integrated with the Army. And our drill sergeant was made fun of because he was a drill sergeant of the women. And we had to just prove ourselves over and over again that we were equal, well, not equal, but we were up to the task. Capable, yes. And one specific instance, I don't know if this was in the book, so maybe I'm giving it away, but maybe I'm not, but that's okay. One specific instance was at the end of training, at the end of basic training, it was like a decathlon, more or less. We had and we didn't know it was going to be a decathlon. We thought it was just going to be a hard run with field gear. So we're in South Carolina, and we're running with field gear. I think it was a 2-mile run. And at the end of the run, let me back up a little bit. There were 3 platoons, two of men, 1 of the women. The 2 of the men platoons, they were able to take off first because the women, they got to be at the back because what are they going to do? They're going to be crawling in, right? And then the women's platoon took off. Well, myself and a friend of mine who I made friends with during basic, we said, you know what, we're going to just show these guys that we can do this. And we took off like bats out of you know what, and we just ran our hearts out, and we beat everybody in the second platoon, and we came in about halfway through with the first platoon. So we were just smoking them, right? We get to the end of the run, and my drill sergeant, he told me this afterwards. He said, you don't know how proud you made me, because all these other guys were just harassing me and saying, where are your pansies? Where are the women? And he says, I think that's 2 of my pansies beating the pants off of your guys right there, coming in. But then at the end of the run, it turned out that we had to dig a foxhole and carry sandbags and crawl under barbed wire. I mean, we were already spent physically, but we had to keep going. Mm-hmm. So that was a rough day, but it was good.
Was there a point?
It was a different atmosphere. They did not support us in basic training.
Jean, I want to ask you the same question when we get to your story, but Lita, was there a point where maybe the first time someone told you, no, you can't do that, you're a woman?
Oh, absolutely,
And how did you
absolutely.
respond to that?
I said, I said, I'm sorry. The first day I walked into my active duty office over at Fort Riley, we had a motor pool. I walked into the motor pool, talked to the warrant officer behind the desk, and he said, "Welcome, Private McNamara. Here's your typewriter over here. You could have a seat, and we'll get you used to things." I said, "I'm sorry, sir, but that's not my job. I was trained to be a 63 hotel. I'm a tank mechanic." He said, Yeah, I know, but here you're going to be a typist, a clerk." I said, "No, no, sir. I trained to be a mechanic."
Mhm.
And he said, "Give that girl a toolbox." And I went out on the bay, and I was a mechanic. But at the very beginning, he didn't think I would do it, and I proved him wrong.
Darn right. Uh, Jean, what do
Mhm.
you remember of these early years of your mom, starting out and going through all of these trials and really you got to be pretty focused in the military. You can't be lax on it. So I'm sure there were difficult times as she was, learning the ropes in the military.
Sure. I just remember when she was away at training, she did make a concerted effort to send us letters and things like Play-Doh and that kind of thing. So, she did try to.
It wasn't Play-Doh. It was modeling clay that
Oh,
you
yeah.
could use
Okay.
for when you're doing a brief.
Hmm.
Oh, right. If you
They
right
didn't have
for
Play-Doh.
right. Okay. Well,
Oh,
we
so it was
got
like military grade Play-Doh in a way.
yeah
Right, right, right,
for making like a sand table.
right.
Okay.
Okay.
And then when she was stationed at Fort Riley, it was a lot of early mornings, and then we would go to daycare, and daycare was amazing because we had people with us, other children from other families, and they were from all over the country and all over the world, and they had all these adventures and they had traveled all over, and so it was a very unique and fun environment to be in. But yeah, I just remember waking up very, very, very early.
Yeah, 4 a.m. wake ups were not good for the kids.
No, but we were able to take a nap at daycare, and that was great.
We've talked with a lot of military brats
Hmm.
on the Scuttlebutt and at VBC in
Hmm.
general. Is there parts that, other than the early mornings, were there things that you didn't like about that lifestyle?
Um, you know what? I guess the only difficult thing was switching schools.
Hmm.
Having to switch schools. Your education is segmented, and perhaps you're not getting everything that you would hope to get from your education. But
Hmm.
so that was a difficult thing to deal with. But my mom decided that she would simply augment our education, and she would, she got us a nanny, and she had us write our special reports for her, and try to make sure that our
She makes it sound like I'm doing. She makes it sound like they're doing my work.
well, no. I mean, we had to write reports about where we were at the time,
Right.
the history, you know. So she did try to incorporate um, our experience into our education and try to improve it there. And then we also had, like the first Texas Instrument computer and things of that nature. And she would get us educational gains. So she was really trying to um, normalize things. But you know what? I think having my sister there with me, going through all of the same experiences, made it easier. If it was a new school and we were having a hard time, we could always talk with one another about that,
Yeah.
and that made it easier. And then also having my mom has a huge network of people that she knows. She's very memorable, and I think she makes lifelong friends. So, for example, when she was stationed in Maryland, we ended up staying with one of her friends from childhood, and so we had that support as well. So it always felt like we were with family, even if it was
Extended family
extended
or
or friends from the past.
yeah, we've always said that if you're friends for more than 20 years, you're family.
Yes, and
Yeah.
that was wonderful as well.
That's what we've sort of learned from our military brats that we've talked with, is that though there are these difficulties, you get so much more life experience very early on.
Hmm. Hmm. And the opportunity to travel.
Mm-hmm.
I will say, because it was a new thing to have women in the regular army, there were a lot of jokes. And when
Like
my mom
not
would
good
show up in
jokes.
uniform to pick, no, not good jokes. And when we were in a civilian school and my mom would show up to pick us up in uniform, there were a lot of comments and questions about that as well. But because she was our mom, and we just thought that was normal to have a mom in the army who was a tank mechanic. Like, isn't everyone's mom a tank mechanic? But then we would find out, no, not quite. But I think it was beneficial as well, because this was a time when there weren't really all that many women as mechanics in general. And I thought it was very cool when she would be working on her own vehicle and walk into an auto parts store, and they would kind of all snicker behind the counter, and then she would tell them exactly what she needed and why, and they would definitely gain respect for her and her knowledge, and that was always fun to see.
There was obviously something about that early life that stuck with you. So why did you
Oh yeah,
decide to enlist when it came time?
my mom raised us to believe that you need to serve others to have a full and fulfilling life. So no matter what you did, if say you weren't able to do that in your day-to-day job, and your off time you needed to do that, and she ensured that we did lots of volunteer work when we were younger.
Mm-hmm.
Like we would volunteer at nursing homes, and we would volunteer to deliver meals on wheels, and we would go with her for all of these activities. So I think it was natural that I wanted to help people, and I also wanted to pursue a career in medicine. And I thought, the military is kind of the best of all worlds. I can gain education and experience as a medic before going into you know going on to earn my degree. And it was a wonderful way to see if I liked a profession, because it's hard to get in, jump in to any medical career without training. So the military was able to provide me with training, and I was also able, to see if that was something that I enjoyed doing before I committed to 8 years of education.
Lita, of all of the experience that you had gained in the military up to that point of Jean enlisting, was there anything, any tips, pointers, advice that you offered to her when she came to you and said, "I want to enlist"?
You got to run. You got to know how to run. That's one thing that my dad did tell me before I even went in. He said, "You got to know how to run." And I said, "Okay." And we were never runners in our family. Nobody in our family ran. So we took it slow. We started out, a block, and then we added another block, and eventually we became runners. And because I think if you're in good shape when you join, it gives you a heads up on everybody else, because you're not fighting physically as well as mentally in the training.
Hmm, that's a great point. Um, Part of like the what you talk about in terms of the book is sort of secrets of the modern military. So growing up on the base, um, the sort of dynamics that you're watching of the other families, things like that. What did you experience with the other people, this family that you were growing?
Well, they were, like I said, they were very supportive. It's a huge network, and everybody knows everybody. And you need a car. Here, this guy knows somebody that sells used cars. You need housing. This guy has housing, because as a single parent, I was not living on base with my compadres. I was living off base in a trailer park. So I rented a trailer, and everybody used our trailer for weekends for barbecues. My crew that I worked with full time at the base would come over, and we'd be working on a car and having a barbecue, and this was the party house. So it turned out to be a good extended family.
Jean, was there anybody that sort of sticks out to you as, other than your mother, obviously, somebody that you looked up to, that as you guys built this big network and this family, is there someone that sort of stood out to you as sort of a separate, someone that you looked up to? Role model.
I would say there were a number of role models. One was my mom's first commander.
What?
Nate?
He wasn't a commander. He was just a reservist that happened to own a bunch of trailers, and my office manager knew him through the base, right?
But yeah, so he was one of the first people that my sister and I got to know as far as, you know, other military personnel beyond our mother. And
that was Nate Foster.
Right, and he was just like an all-around good guy. You know, he was smart, he was funny, he was a bodybuilder, so he liked to carry us around as though we were dumbbells. And
he had two boys.
Yeah, and it was just, and then as she went on, I know when she was in her officer basic course, you know, because she was the one with the kids and the family, and as you know, established again, our house became the house where everyone would come to dinner, because a lot of the newly minted officers didn't have families yet, or established families, and they would come over and they would teach us their family recipes. So we learned how to make things like kimchi, and we learned, you know, just about, you know, because I think a lot about family is shared over the dinner table, and it was a wonderful opportunity to meet people from different areas and different cultures and backgrounds, and that they wanted to contribute to our family through food, and everything was truly wonderful. And we became like the unofficial mascots of my mom's my mom's company, and that was truly wonderful as well. It was just I would say, when you're the active duty side, because you're working together, you're living together, you're eating together, it does have more of that family feel to it. And it's I think all of our experiences were fairly wonderful from that regard.
I agree.
On the flip side of that coin, Lita, what do you think was the most challenging aspect of those early years and your time in the military?
I thought it was a breeze. I don't think I had.
There are a couple stories in the book about incidents like the time that she accidentally cut off someone's fingers, but we won't go into that. You'll have to read the book about.
That's a good. Yeah, you hooked me there. Now it's what happened.
Yeah,
you'll have to read the book for that story.
We had a work injury.
Yeah, or you know, like the time she was assigned to cut all of the base grass with a pair of scissors.
Oh, that was a challenge. Okay, so what was the challenge? Here's the challenge: learning my place in the echelon.
But
okay, I'm going to give away a little bit. I happen to have been good friends at home with a friend of a congressman. And when I ran into a problem at basic training, AIT, at AIT, so you're a nobody at AIT, right? I was a E2, I think, at that point. You're a nobody at AIT. I got off the bus one day towards the end of our cycle, and my, what do they call him? Platoon sergeant, I guess. He wasn't a drill sergeant at that. My platoon sergeant was a black man, and he ripped the stripes off of his shirt and threw them on the ground in front of me at the foot of the base of the stairs. And he said, "Okay, McNamara, you got my rank. Now what do you want?" And I'm like, whoa, what? I didn't realize that when you talk to somebody that knows a congressman, things happen. I had wanted to switch orders with a friend of mine, bunkmate, and she was supposed to be stationed in Fort Carson, Colorado. I was supposed to be stationed vice versa.
Yep.
I was supposed to be stationed at Fort Carson, Colorado. She was supposed to be stationed at Fort Riley, Kansas. And she actually had a fiance that was in Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
So she said, "Hey, we're both mechanics. We're both the same age. We're both females. Let's just switch orders." So we went to the first sergeant. "No, you can't do that. When you get to your duty station, if you want to make a switch, you do a switch." So I made a phone call home to my friend, and I was complaining, and I didn't know that this was going to happen. I was just, crying in my beer, more or less. He cried in his beer with his friend, the congressman. The next day, the congressman flew to the base and changed our orders.
Oh.
I cut grass the rest of the time that I was there with scissors. I learned that you got to stay in your echelon. You don't go over your head on. You got to stay in your lane.
Interesting.
And unfortunately, I had a similar situation where I called my little sister to talk about the situation, and of course she went and told my mother, who then turned around and told, and it was another situation, but mine ended up with a naked man in a footlocker, so a little different.
Wait a second. Yours ended with a naked man in a footlocker?
Yeah.
That sounds like you just told me a part of the beginning of the joke and the butt of the joke.
Yeah,
that's in the book.
That's in the book. Yeah.
Oh man, certainly another story to get to. And Jean, I want to dive a little bit back into your service. So you enlisted. What was it? You saw your mom sort of, in a way, breaking a glass ceiling. What was it like to sort of follow in those footsteps and pick up where she left off in a way?
Well, I did learn that you don't want anyone to know that your parents are both officers if you're enlisted. That can be problematic. But it was nice to actually. She went with me when I enlisted, and she was in the same battalion, so she had company command right down the hall from where I had enlisted and where my company was. So it was a little challenging because but luckily ma'am and mom kind of sound alike. So yeah, when you're saying good morning mom, you can kind of pass. But I think she set a great example of what you can do and how you can utilize the education that the military provides for you in the civilian world as well. So I enlisted as a medic, and then I worked in a doctor's office and tried to see what I thought about career in medicine, and it turned out it wasn't quite for me. Mm-hmm. But without that experience, I don't think I would have realized it as quickly. I'm way too empathetic, and you can't keep apologizing, as you're scrubbing someone's burned hand. You can't keep saying, "Oh, I'm so sorry, it hurts." You have to just move past that, and so I did learn quickly that I'm too empathetic for a career in medicine, but it was a wonderful education. Just the learning how to do things as a team, learning about leadership and how to delegate and all of those things. My mom set a great example, and I hope that I followed that example and did her proud.
Of course.
Mm-hmm. So, Jean, I want to pose to you the same question. When was the first time someone told you no? It was a very different military whenever you joined, but did you experience some of the same?
I walked into an office to give them my orders and tell them I was attached to their unit, and they said, "Oh."
As a medic?
As a medic, yes. And they said, "Oh, great, your typewriter is right over there." And I said, "I don't type. I've never typed. I had, a TI computer, so I was a little bit past the age of typing." And I said, if you want, I can peck in at that typewriter, or I can go save that gentleman's life because it looks like he's in cardiac distress. So they said, oh, okay, go do that. Thank you very much. But it was odd because I was walking in with, I was assisting a field artillery unit, which is unusual to have a female attached at that time to a field artillery unit, even as a medic. But they never said to the person that was going to be working in the ambulance with me, oh, there's your typewriter. And he never faced that same situation, but it was a very awkward attachment when I was attached to that unit, because it was as though they didn't have mothers or sisters or cousins or grandmothers. It was as though they had never seen a woman before. And I'm pretty sure they, at some point had seen a woman before. But I tried to be professional, except for that one incident with the naked man. And I tried to do my job. And I just focused on doing the job. And when they would, when men would giggle and things of that nature, I would just, keep doing the job.
Let's talk a bit. You retired after an injury. How serious was the injury, and how did it occur?
I was on active duty, and I was perhaps foolhardy that I wanted to always do everything to excel, to exceed the expectations. So when I found out that the German Armed Forces had this thing called the German Efficiency Badge, and that it was something I could earn through my, physical prowess, I thought, well, I'm, number 2 in my class in terms of education, and I think I'm going to go ahead and try to do this as well with the German Armed Forces. And one of the events, they had the wrong equipment set up, so my brain herniated into my skull.
This part of her brain went down into the spinal,
the cerebellum.
Yeah.
And my spinal column, the odontoid process, so the top 2 pieces of bone that are kind of fused, went into my brain. So it kind of, it smushed like a spring, but unfortunately it wasn't very springy. And my left shoulder blade was torn off, and it turns out my left ankle was kind of destroyed as well, but that was not like the first concern. The first concern was putting me in traction and keeping everything going. So
this could have very easily either killed you or paralyzed you.
Yes. They actually said at that time, this was a long time ago, not quite
April of 2000.
Yes, not quite cart and buggy time, but it did feel like a long time ago. And I did Pilates every morning on my own, and yoga every day on my own, in addition to
before the injury.
Yes. So in addition to PT with my unit, I did Pilates, I did yoga, I went to the gym, and I was running. So I was in very, very good physical condition, and the Pilates, I think, really helped to strengthen my neck. So and they kind of did indicate that if it hadn't been for that, and for how, my physical condition at the time, that things could have looked very different.
So let me get this straight. You were in some sort of, you were doing some sort of training, like physical training.
Yes.
With an object, like a sandbag or something?
No, I did like a decathlon kind of thing with the German Armed Forces. So they do, it's similar to what my mom was describing about her endocycle training, but you have to run with all of your equipment, your weapon, your rucksack and everything. You have to fire a weapon and do well with the weapon. You have to swim, you have to sprint, you have to so you're doing all of these activities, and one of them was a high jump, and instead of the big cushy mat that would absorb the impact and the energy and everything from that jump, there were tumbling mats piled to that height, and tumbling mats have no give.
Mm-hmm.
So like she hit a brick wall.
Right. So instead, my body gave. Yeah.
So that one jump ended her career.
And thankfully didn't end your life.
Yes.
Right. And actually, I jumped twice because the first time I touched the bar with my foot, so I went ahead and did it again. And the second time, I didn't wake up right after, or I was unconscious for a little bit there.
To the hospital.
Yeah.
How long was your recovery?
Let's see, we're in 2022.
Still recovering.
It is still ongoing. At first, I didn't know how bad the injury was. They said, "Oh, you probably just strained your neck," and we didn't even talk about my shoulder or my ankle. So I was like, okay. And they said, you're going to do physical therapy and you're going to be fine. And I was like, all right, great. Let's do this. And then they realized it was more serious because I was having difficulty swallowing, breathing,
passing out.
I was passing out multiple times throughout the day. If I stood up, I would black out. If I tried to go on the stairs, I would black out. And my left arm wasn't functioning, wasn't working. And they kind of just said, well, you know what, you're not working hard enough at physical therapy.
Oh my God.
And I would go to physical, oh yeah, so I would go to physical therapy and I would just have tears running down my face as I pushed it even harder. And then I would come home and I would do the exercises and, keep going. And finally, a doctor at Great Lakes Naval Base said, you know what? Because I was telling her about my nephew saying "Hasta la vista, baby," which was in a movie at the time, and I said, and they thought it was so funny because my muscles on one side don't do anything, and she said, wait, do that right now, and then she said, okay, we're gonna send you for a brain MRI.
Was it? Sorry, let me interrupt real quick. Was this the first female doctor that you saw?
No, doctor, yes. I was seeing a female. I didn't see, actually, at Fort Knox, I didn't see a doctor. I would actually have to fly to Fort Knox for exams, and I would see a physician's assistant.
Let me ask another question. Did you feel as a woman that because you had to push so hard already in your career, that because they said, well, you're not pushing hard enough in physical therapy, did you feel like you had to go that extra mile through these injuries?
Oh, sure.
Absolutely.
And I was always second. There was always, and I mean, not that there's anything against him, but there was always a man who was first and I was second. And I did feel like, I wanted to be first. I wanted to, I wanted to push, I wanted to succeed, and I wanted to prove myself. And it's just unfortunate that they didn't send me to see a neurologist or a neurosurgeon. They were sending me to see an orthopedic physician's assistant.
How long did you deal with this pain until somebody said, wait a second, there's something more serious going on?
4 years.
Yeah.
4 years?
Yes. And by this time I had
muscle atrophy.
Muscle atrophy, and that's actually when they realized it was something bigger, because
the side of her face had started to lose muscle. The neck.
Right. None of the muscles on the one side of my neck were working.
Left side
my arm, my fingers, my hand, everything was atrophying. And they did the MRI, and then the doctor looked at me and she goes, okay, just drive home very carefully.
Yeah, that's what they said. Drive home carefully because
you
could die if you had an accident right now.
Yeah. And then
her brain stem was being pinched in half at that point.
And they said, and that was why I was having trouble. It's all of the things that you don't have control over. So, like your heart rate, your blood pressure, your breathing at night, your digestion. So my intestines, they don't work. Your other bodily functions, your bladder. All those things weren't working. And it was just very hard to hear, I had been pushing myself all this time, and no matter what I had done, it wouldn't have made a difference. And unfortunately, it wasn't the first time that happened, or that was the first time. I take it back. That was the first time that had happened. So they scheduled me to go to Wright Pat and see a neurosurgeon, and we talk about that in the book. And I did end up getting 2 brain surgeries and some work in my neck, and now I have I'm a little bit like Frankenstein's monster, where I have a lot of nuts and bolts and things going on in my neck. And every time they do an x-ray for dental, they're like, oh, what is this? So I like to add a little bit of excitement to their days. But yeah, it was a hard road. And then the same thing with my shoulder.
Yeah, they didn't realize that her shoulder blade had actually detached.
Right. So I
completely from all the muscles.
Yeah. So they kept saying, there's this gap in the back where there should be muscle, and obviously you're not pushing it hard enough because there's no muscle there. And again, I would go and I'd be in tears there. I'd be in tears at home. I was at this point quite depressed because I had gone through, brain surgery, and they said, you might get function back. You might, it's been so long, but you might never get function back. And so that was tough. And then my mom said, you know what, I found this guy. I guess my mom has been an amazing advocate. When they say, there's nothing more we can do, she's like, oh yes, you're just not the person to provide that, and we'll find somebody that can. So she found someone who said, took one look and said, well, nothing's attached. That's why there's a gap. There's nothing bridging that gap. You could work out from now until forever, and that won't change because you can't physically reattach those muscles. We have to go in and literally drill into your shoulder blade and stitch those muscles on because that's the only way to reattach them. So that was hard to hear as well, that I had gone through 2 more years of physical therapy for and pain, intense pain and frustration and disappointment in myself for nothing. Because and then to turn around and tell the doctor at the VA, hey, did you know, like, I understand you're an orthopedist, but I guess you work more on the shoulder joint. But when it comes to the shoulder blade, you might want to read what this doctor said. And he said, no, thank you. So all of that was quite difficult. And then at the same time, you'll read more in the book about how my mother and I experienced basically the same thing. Well, not the same thing, but how women's health care in the VA at that time, that my mom needed it and that I first went to the VA, was rudimentary at best. Mm-hmm. It was sequestered to the basement, and it was very uncomfortable being there. It was awkward that they assigned me to the obstetrician and gynecologist for my neurocare. And in that regard, the VA has really transformed. The Women's Health Clinic now at Hines VA is a light, bright, airy place where you feel comfortable. They've taken steps to make sure that when you're in the waiting room, you're not being ogled by every single person that walks by. It's been a really remarkable, amazing, and much needed transformation. And that was truly wonderful to see.
Wow, Jean, I'm so sorry that you went through, and you're still working through this.
Still, yes.
Well,
it speaks to your strength, just your personal, your soul strength to be able to push through all of this. It's inspiring in some ways and scary, but boy, you have so much strength.
Well, I would definitely say I couldn't have done it without my family. My mother, my great aunt, my sister, my nephews who have been there basically through all of this. They've all been truly amazing. And I can never express how grateful I am.
And you really hit the nail on the head there in the sense of family. Just and that's what I want to loop this back to the book again, because there's something that really caught me is just looking at the cover of the book. There's this, I see my wife with my daughter, and there's always those just like those shining moments that you remember of them smiling at each other or holding each other, or just, whenever you hug your kid, there's just nothing like that. And there's this really beautiful
Mm-hmm.
picture of the both of you on the cover of your book. I'm assuming that during your recovery, the idea of this book kind of came out, and that you chose to have highlight Lita's career, your career, and struggles, and just give an account of what this relationship is, not only between both of you in the military, but between each other.
Yeah, we always would kind of have the same exact story to tell when someone would ask us, like what was there a time when you faced sexism, or like what was it like when you first went to get health care at the VA? And we would kind of have the same story, and we were not kind of, we were utterly amazed
that it hadn't changed in all those years.
yes I mean
Now it's changed.
yes
But during that period, it hadn't.
between 1977 and 1993, there were obviously some astonishing changes, but there were a lot of things that were the same. And somebody said, boy, you two should write a book, because it is fascinating to know how much things remained the same and how much things had changed. And also, my mother has so many unique stories.
Oh, I'm sure
So
we just brushed the surface in the last hour.
Yes.
And you're going to get a lot if you pick up the book. My audience, pick up the book. You're going to get many more of these stories, much more in detail. It's a wonderful,
Okay.
wonderful book.
Thank
and,
you.
and not just Lita stories. You're getting almost a two-parter in one book. You're getting Jean stories as well.
Yes. And then at the end, we felt it only right to show, to come together, because our experiences then overlapped. My mom had to retire in order to take care of me. I needed full-time care. And so we were, then at that point, we were going through the exact same experiences, but from two sides, of the same coin, because she would be out there trying to find, care for me and trying to be supportive. And at the same time, this is her daughter. And she had to see me go through all of that, and was empathetic to what I was going through, but at the same time had to be very strong. And that was, hard, I think, on both of us.
I'm
It
sure.
continues to be a challenge to this day.
Yeah, yeah. The strength that you have, the resolve you have to keep pushing, and for your health, and for your family, and the strength that you pull from them, Lita. It also speaks to your strength, not only as a person, but as a parent and a mother, to say, okay, I'm going to put all this aside and take care of Jean. Um, when I first started the episode, the interview with you both, I wasn't anticipating uh, this seeing this sort of love that I kind of knew was there, but boy, does it become so much more apparent in talking with both of you about your story.
Thank you. And I think if anyone out there can, there's something truly remarkable about, and I'm going to say this in an odd way, but like meeting your parents as an adult, about learning about them as people. Because, as you're growing up, you idolize them, they can do no wrong, and they're also at the same point making all of the rules, and you don't have a lot to contribute. But as an adult, it's a different dynamic, and one that you have to transition through, because a lot of times, you go back home and you spend time with your parents and you revert to your childhood interactions, the way that you interacted with your parents as a child. But if you can get past that and interact with your parents as an adult and learn about them as people and reflect back, like, I always think, like, oh my gosh, when my mom was my age, she was in the hospital hearing that I had coded during surgery. And as the surgeon was bawling his eyes out, telling her, that I had bled out and that I coded, instead of starting with everything's okay now. And it's like, gosh, how would I don't know if I could handle that. So it's been a unique experience from that perspective as well.
I'm not usually speechless, but I feel speechless in a way. It's an incredible story that I hope people will pick up the book and dive into. There's a lot to learn from this, and it's not and something that you said about transitioning from a child to like a peer with your parent. You're still their child, but you're learning about them as people. But I feel like as now a parent, and yeah, my daughter's only 2.5, but I feel like there's going to be a transition. Lita, you could speak to this, of seeing your child as an adult, and suddenly you're not the rule maker, and you have to accept where they've come and who they are and the beliefs they have.
Absolutely, and support every decision that they make, because they are their own human being, and you're so proud that they've come so far and they've done everything that you were hoping that they could do, and here they are, taking over the world by storm.
I want every parent to sit down with you, Lita. Please, I'm going to bring everybody, and everybody can just sit at the altar and listen to your stories. I know we've reached our time here together, but I want to ask you, as sort of a final question, what do you hope people get from your book?
Well, we're proud that we've been able to document our journey for future generations, and we hope that they will learn from our struggles how to overcome their own.
Jean?
I will definitely second that, and I will hope also that they'll learn, that things may look very dark and dreary sometimes, but there is another day. And
the sun will come out tomorrow.
We'll burst into song now. No, but that it is, life is ever changing, and every day is going to be different. And today, you might be overwhelmed with pain and all of life's complications, but tomorrow things will hopefully be a little bit easier. And it seems like in the world, lately, things are pretty challenging, but you have to keep pushing through. And also you have to, I think our book shows that supporting one another can be both, therapeutic, it can be beneficial for all parties, and the more we can do for one another, I think the better. So if you can, if you see somebody out there struggling, if you can help them, please do. And notice that tomorrow will be different. Today might feel overwhelming, but just hold on until tomorrow.
Well, sun's got to come up tomorrow. It's sort of my always motto. It's sun's coming up tomorrow, no matter what.
Yeah, right. At 4 a.m. and we'll be there.
Well, thank you, Lita and Jean, so much for sharing this with us. I feel like, I got to know you both so well throughout this conversation, and I'm just, Jean, I'm pulling for your recovery. I hope that it continues to go well. Lita, thank you for being there. Just being there. It's just, I feel like that's something that needs to be said. Just a thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you to our audience for listening today. If you have any comments, you can email me at Shaun, SHAUN, at veteransbreakfastclub.org. You can also like, share, subscribe, and ring the bell on YouTube so you're the first to know whenever we release new episodes. And I want to thank you both for coming on to the Scuttlebutt, and to our audience. We'll be back next week with another episode.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And as a quick postscript, Lita and Jean, you're both hosts of a podcast. It's called Podcast DX.
Yes. Again, our desire to help others ended up with something amazing. And when we were in North Carolina for 6 months for my healthcare, my cousin was in Illinois dying from liver failure, and we found out that where we were located at Duke University Hospital, they did twice as many liver transplants as anywhere else in the world. And they said, well, your cousin should fly in down here and we can see what we can do for her. She ended up getting a liver. And we ended up learning how much we didn't know about the healthcare of someone needing a transplant. And my mom said, if it wasn't for the people that were living next door at the time, who had a transplant about 2 weeks before her, telling us all the tips, tricks, hints, and advice that we needed to get through, it would have been very challenging.
And she might not have survived.
Right.
So we wanted to share those stories with the world so that other people can learn how to get through whatever it is medically that they're going through.
Patients join us every week and tell us about their medical condition, how they came to their, how their condition was diagnosed, and what has been the most helpful for them, what their family and friends did that they found to be helpful. Just all the little things that you won't learn in the doctor's office, but that can be extremely beneficial.
And that's what Jean and I do now.
Yes.
Incredible. Well, thank you. And I hope our audience looks you up. Where can they find Podcast DX?
Everywhere that podcasts are.
Yes. We're also on TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook.
It's just podcast, and then DX stands for diagnosis. So just the word podcast and then Delta X-ray.
We're on our website, podcastdx.com.
Wonderful. Well, thank you both again.
And thank you.
And you guys have a wonderful day, and hopefully we'll see you again on another episode of the Scuttlebutt.
Sounds great. Thanks.
Looking
Thank you for watching this episode of The Scuttlebutt. I'd like to take a moment to thank both of our sponsors, the first being D&D Metal Recycling and Auto Salvage. They began as a small hauling and used auto parts operation in the Pittsburgh area in the late 1970s, but they've grown into a full-service metal recycling company with 2 locations, Lawrenceville and Tarentum. D&D accepts all types of metal, both ferrous and non-ferrous, that may be generated by industrial manufacturing, construction and demolition, small commercial entities, as well as individual customers. They have a wide variety of material handling equipment and are capable of managing any type of job in a timely and efficient manner. You can contact them for quotes and availability at D&D. That's D&D autosalvage.com. Thank you so much to D&D. They've been a sponsor for quite some time, and we really appreciate their support. The second being tobacco-free Adagio Health. They are dedicated to reducing and preventing tobacco use and to getting the word out about the hazards of smoking and secondhand smoke. They're all about health. So they want people to quit, and they have classes and nicotine replacement therapy and a popular quit line, which is the easiest number to remember ever, 1-800-QUIT-NOW. They also educate people, children especially, about tobacco use from cigarettes, cigars, pipes, chew, snuff, and other nicotine products like vaping. Finally, tobacco-free Adagio Health advocates for public and private policies that ensure healthy places to live, work, and play. You can learn all of what tobacco-free Adagio Health offers at tobaccofree.adagiohealth.org, or you can watch our recent episode with tobacco-free Adagio Health on the Scuttlebutt, where they talk about a lot of the programs that they offer for those who are looking to quit. Thank you to both of our sponsors for their continued support of the Scuttlebutt podcast. We really appreciate it. Thanks.